Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Brandy Bryson, Associate Professor in the College of Education here at Appalachian State University. I'm also the Director of Inclusive Excellence with the Center for Academic Excellence. So thank you for joining me for this session on situational factors in the learning environment. Just real quickly, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about me. I am a sociologist of education by training with a particular emphasis on the study of diversity and inclusion and specifically race and how that manifests in both society and the connections in schooling. I have been working with educators and educational leaders for the last decade or so in attempting to make our educational practices, both inside and outside the classroom, more equitable and more inclusive. So thank you for joining me today. Get my screen shared here, and we will get started. So thinking about situational factors in the learning environment, I'm going to make some references to a resource titled Inclusive Excellence Teaching Strategies. It's linked here in these slides if you have a copy of these slides. It can also be found on the Inclusive Excellence pages of the CAE website under Inclusive Excellence Teaching Strategies. So it might be helpful for you to have those in front of you as I run through our session today, so you can read those as I'm talking about each one of those strategies. So if you want to pause and grab your teaching strategies sheet and come right back, and then we'll jump to it. If we think about situational factors in the learning environment, situational factors are really the multitude of factors that affect student learning and success. D. Fink, who is sort of the seminal author in course redesign at the post-secondary level, and he talks about the context of the teaching and learning situation. So that might be the format of the course. When we're talking about online courses, that would be synchronous versus asynchronous, certainly plays a role in the context. The meeting time. We know that if it's a synchronous meeting time, an 8 a.m. time is very different for students than an 11:15 a.m. time in terms of participation, discussion, dialogue, alertness, all of those pieces. The nature of the subject, of course, is contextual to the teaching and learning situation. If students have a lot of anxiety around statistics, that is certainly going to be one of those contextual factors around the subject of the course. Expectations of external groups such as your department or your program or accrediting bodies that can impact decisions that we make in our course. Certainly all of these contextual pieces are important, but today we're going to talk a little bit more about characteristics of the teacher and the learners. This oftentimes can feel a little more abstract, and so we want to get into some specificities today about how our characteristics as a teacher and the characteristics of our students can create situational factors in the learning environment. So we're going to talk a little bit about identities. Identity of the instructor that impacts course development and delivery in ways that we don't always think about. And then the identities of the students that impact their relationship to learning and their relationship to the subject matter at hand. So identities matter, and they matter a great deal. So let's talk about why. When we think about social identities in the classroom and we think about the variety of identities that we show up with, research tells us that our social identities and the resulting lived experience from those identities impact our pedagogical and curricular choices. Research also tells us that students' social identities and lived experiences impact their relationship to course content and learning. So what do we mean by that? What are these different identities that we're talking about? You can potentially see here in the bottom these circles with a variety of identities. Some research circles talk about these identities as the Big 8. There's the Big 10, the Big 12. But there's a multitude of identities that play a role in who we are, that shape how we have experienced the world and perceive the world. And based on those experiences and perceptions, the way that we show up and interact and understand the world, and then interact with each other as part of that process. So if we think about these different identities, here in this green circle is neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is thinking about the diversity of the ways in which our brain is structured, the way in which our brain processes information. So this can be cognitive. This can also be related to people who are on the autism spectrum, people with attention deficit, ADD or ADHD diagnoses. And then sometimes people with anxiety have particularly attuned ways of processing information with speed and rigor. So neurodiversity can refer to a lot of different things that's happening with our brain structure and the way that we process information. Of course, we all know that socioeconomic status and social class is an identity and a position in the world that we all locate. Race and ethnicity, educational background, our geographic region, whether we're from a rural or urban or suburban area, certainly impacts the ways in which we understand and perceive and navigate the world. Our veteran status, disability, our cultural background, gender identity. Gender identity is the ways in which we think about who we are as a woman or a trans person or a man or a person who doesn't identify as trans but rejects that man-woman gender binary. So gender identity is our relationship to the way that we think about our gender and feel about our gender, while gender expression is the way that we express that relationship to our gender outwardly, what other people get to see. Our sexual orientation plays a role in the decisions that we make and the ways in which students show up in our classes, as well as religion and age. And we certainly know that our students respond to us differently based on our age. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. And when I think about myself as a woman, particularly thinking about my gender identity and gender expression, I express myself for the most part in the ways that we often traditionally think about women. I wear makeup, I do certain things to my hair that oftentimes get associated with those traditional ideas about what it means to be a woman. And so for me, being a woman in the classroom, I may think specifically about the importance of making sure that women scholars are represented in my course. If I am teaching a course on business, or I am teaching a course in one of the STEM fields where women have been underrepresented historically. As a woman, I might be more cognizant to make sure that I'm bringing women scholars into my curriculum. And for women or the non-male identified folks in my classroom, the students in my classroom, they may appreciate that and feel more connected to my content or my curriculum because they see themselves represented in that curriculum. As a white person and a faculty member and instructor, if I am teaching course material, but I'm not necessarily thinking about how my race plays a role in my pedagogical and curricular decisions, I may not look to make sure that my content and my materials and the scholars that I'm including that we are reading in class and talking about in class are diversified racially. And so what that might mean for students of color in my class, particularly at a predominantly white institution, is they may not get to see themselves represented in my curriculum. And that might have lasting impacts on their relationship to my course and relationship to learning about the content in my course. So that's an example of how our identities can impact both our pedagogical and curricular choices, as well as students' identities to course content and learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we move forward. So thinking about yourselves and thinking about your own location to your identities as it relates to your teaching, I want to start with an activity. And it's probably a good idea for you to go ahead and pause and just briefly jot down a response when I pose the question. I'll give you a moment to respond, and then you can unpause and we'll move to the next question. So the first one is, what identity were you most aware of when you were a student? Thinking about these different identities at the bottom, which identity for you were you most aware of as a student, whether that be a high school student or a college student? Well, maybe perhaps there's a memory around one of those identities that came up for you. For the second one, what identity were you least aware of, the identity about yourself, when you were developing your last course? So the last course that you developed, or perhaps a course you redesigned, what was something that you weren't necessarily thinking about? So I'll share an example here. The identity that I was most aware of when I was a student was being a first generation college student. So from a working class socioeconomic status, as a first generation college student, I worked multiple jobs, 3 jobs actually, as a first year student. And it was incredibly stressful, time consuming. I slept very little. And I oftentimes had to make decisions about whether or not I was going to put gas in my car to get to work, or whether or not I was going to be able to eat lunch. And so that certainly impacted my ability to engage. I was still a very good student, but the stress level that I was under impacted the way that I could show up in the classroom. And I was most aware of that because this was an identity that was more underrepresented or more marginalized, while my middle class peers didn't have to think about or worry about paying their bills. And so that wasn't an issue for them because they were middle class or even slightly wealthy. And so they didn't have that sort of mental labor of having to think about and navigate through a work aspect of their learning as well. When I think about an identity that I was least aware of about myself when I was developing my last course, there's a number of these identities that I don't hold an underrepresented or marginalized association with that identity. And so thinking about disability, I have had to push myself to get better about making sure that my course materials are accessible, making sure that my videos are captioned, making sure that I'm designing things that are accessible to students, and just adding captioning to courses can serve a great need of a variety of different students with maybe some hearing impairments, or students with particular sensory issues where they may need the volume down, but the captioning helps. And then students whose first language is not English. So captioning can help tremendously around that. And so thinking about myself as not disabled in that way prevented me from really serving my students for a number of years until I really pushed myself on this. The next question, which identity was most emphasized for you at home when you were growing up? So if you'll pause for that one. And this one is really important, particularly when we think about the current context, the current situational factor in our learning environment. We have multiple things happening at once. We had COVID-19 as a significant situational factor in the learning environment. And we also have the current context of ongoing racism and the racial violence that that Black and Brown communities have experienced in society. And we're seeing this upheaval against this system through a variety of protests and articles and experiences. And so if we think about what this means, particularly for our students of color, anytime I do this activity with a group of people, the identity that was most emphasized for people of color oftentimes is race and ethnicity. And so that manifests through conversations, particularly with Black and Brown boys, but also with people of color generally, about how they need to show up in the world, how they need to be particularly careful with law enforcement, being cognizant of safety, and then how they need to show up at school or in the classroom in college, and how oftentimes they're told that they need to be twice as good to be received equally in the classroom by teachers. And this is connected to our larger assumptions in society, not individual bad teachers, but our larger assumptions about who is smart and who is not smart, and who deserves to be here and who doesn't deserve to be here. And this is complex, and this is incredibly layered. But many of our students of color show up and race and ethnicity was really emphasized at home, and for very good reason. And so they're thinking a lot about their identity as a racialized being in our predominantly white courses, where we're not necessarily, as white professors, taking that into account. And so it's important for us to think about these identities as emphasized for people in different ways. And then the last question is, which identity do you have the most to learn about in yourself? So what identity might we need to explore a little bit more to understand how it plays a role, not only in your life in general, but also in the ways in which you show up as an instructor or a professor in your course? For me, I think that this is probably going to be disability again. I think neurodiversity is something significant, and certainly race and ethnicity. And I think that a lot of white folks are really thinking about race and ethnicity right now, as am I, in this current context. And what is our responsibility? What is our relationship to histories of race and the current context of race and racism? So again, questions that are important to ask ourselves as we move forward. Some of the identities that contribute to these situational factors, and some of the things that we can do as faculty instructors, is working to understand our own personal story, how our identities have influenced our worldviews, our assumptions, our decisions about curriculum and classroom management styles. It's important for us to be cognizant of the diversity of identities that's reflected in our classroom materials and invited panels and lectures. And this is numbers 1 and 2 on the Inclusive Excellence Teaching Strategies handout. And we have to allow our students to bring their identities into the course. We really can't ask students to leave part of who they are at the door. It's really impossible. And so why is this important? If we think about academic success, why is allowing students to bring their identities into our courses, why is that important? And why is this important particularly for our underrepresented students? If we think about underrepresentation as a pedagogical issue, some of our underrepresented students, whether they're showing up in a face-to-face classroom or they're in a synchronous space where they can see other people's faces on Zoom, or they're in an asynchronous space where they might be able to see Flipgrid videos or pictures that are attached to our As You Learn Moodle page, there's a question, does anyone look like me? Do I belong here? Is this the space for me? Not only in this classroom, but also in this field of study, in this discipline, in this major. Another question is, does the course content reflect people who look like me? And that's connected back to my scenario or my example about myself, and thinking about being white and how that impacts the decisions that I make about my content. Will my knowledge and experiences be taken seriously? So some of our underrepresented students struggle with not knowing if they'll be taken seriously, if their experiences will be taken seriously, if their level of intelligence will be taken seriously. Some of our underrepresented students are oftentimes report when we talk about issues with the Inclusive Excellence team and our underrepresented students, they may report that they've been accused of cheating, or a professor or their peers was particularly surprised because they said something smart. And so this is important for us to think about and to get the skills to address these things when they come up. And the last one then connected to that example, will anyone be surprised about my abilities and success? So underrepresentation and all of the questions that come with that is certainly a pedagogical issue and contributes to situational factors in the learning environment. So what are some other things that we can do to address these situational factors? Get to know our students, make them feel valued as humans and not just a number, particularly if we teach large classes. A brief questionnaire on the first day of class, you could ask, is there anything that you would like me to know about you? Or are there circumstances that would make our learning environment difficult for you and or better for you? So this is information for us as instructors, but it's also a signifier to students that we do care and we care about them deeply. Do use inclusive language. Names and gender pronouns matter to students, thus they matter to student success. So make sure that we're asking students their names, not calling names from a roll from Banner or As You Learn, but rather allowing students to share their own names with us and then consistently using those names, whether that's through email, through discussion boards, or in the Zoom synchronous platform, whatever platform we're using those names. Gender pronouns also matter. So our students are more keenly attuned to the shifting language around gender and gender pronouns. This does not mean that as instructors, we should ask all of our students to introduce themselves and their gender pronouns. This could potentially out some students and it could create some danger around that. If you want to make students comfortable and again, signify that you're thinking about these issues in a comprehensive way, you can introduce yourself and your own gender pronouns. And that leads the way for students to sometimes feel more comfortable in telling you their gender pronouns. If students do share their gender pronouns, be real careful to use the correct gender pronouns. Sometimes this can be difficult if you haven't interacted with very many people who are trans or gender non-binary, or use they, them, their, or other types of non-binary pronouns. But it's very important that we not misgender students. If we do misgender students, we just need to apologize and quickly move on. We need to try to be aware of our assumptions and subtle biases. We all have these biases. Oftentimes they're unconscious and they reveal themselves in ways that we don't even realize that they were a bias. And so we need to become aware of those. And then what we're trying to do is prevent these microaggressions against our students and against our colleagues. Microaggressions are the subtle and often unintentional but degrading comments or actions that are directed at a member of a minoritized group. Oftentimes these are grounded in stereotypes, or they reinforce stereotypes or deficit thinking about the group. And microaggressions can have a cumulative and negative effect, like a million mosquito bites. So 1, 2, 3 mosquito bites, you know, itchy, annoying, not terrible, but a million mosquito bites, and it's a completely different experience in our bodies. So it's important that we think about how these microaggressions show up. Asking underrepresented students, so a student of color or a woman in a predominantly male class, or a trans student or a gay or lesbian student, when we ask them to speak for their entire group's experience or to write specifically around one of their identities, this is considered a microaggression. It's also really important for us as faculty and instructors to respond to their peers' microaggressions or stereotypical comments that students may say in our classroom. What we hear on the Inclusive Excellence team is that it's oftentimes not so much that the instructor or the professor is making the microaggression or the problematic comment, but oftentimes it's their peers or their students. And when the instructor or professor hears it, we actually don't do anything to respond. So it's important that we think about that in responding to those situational factors in our learning environment. Some ways to make our underrepresented students feel welcome, to feel a sense of belonging in our classroom, to feel important, like they are valued, is to use microaffirmations. Microaffirmations are the subtle positive messages that we give one another that show support, appreciation, inclusion, and worth. However, authenticity is really the key here. We want to make sure that we are speaking authentically and not sounding like robots, because we can certainly pick up from around that with each other. So some examples: I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad you're in my class. All students need to hear this. I believe in your potential to succeed. I am concerned about you, or I care about you. Please come see me during office hours to connect. Here's what I can do to support you if students come to you with needs, or asking the question, how can I support you? Have you considered this particular opportunity? So connecting our students to a variety of opportunities and making sure that we're spending time thinking about our underrepresented students and how we can connect them to greater opportunities, networking opportunities, research opportunities, etc. You would be a great candidate for this particular thing. Meeting or talking with you is really important to me. I believe you should be proud of what you've accomplished thus far. I am here for you. Let me know if I can help. Again, authenticity is key in these microaffirmations, but microaffirmations can go a long way in addressing some of the more negative or problematic situational factors as they relate to identity issues. When we think about some of the additional things that we can do from the Inclusive Excellence teaching strategies, number 11 is really significant right now. When significant national or campus-specific events or incidents occur, acknowledging them can go a long way, particularly for students most impacted by the circumstances. And so it's important that we acknowledge that we're in the midst of a pandemic. It's important to acknowledge that your own vulnerability, that you're struggling with how to proceed. It's important to open up this space so that students who are low-income students or living in poverty, who are having to work multiple jobs to bring in income because of perhaps their parents lost their jobs due to COVID, or they're taking care of their brothers and sisters and siblings who are at home now, or they don't have access to a computer or to a particular software program that we're wanting them to use for one of our courses, or they're living in a Latinx or Black community, particularly in an urban area where COVID has had a significantly greater impact and folks don't have equitable access to medical care. All of these pieces play a significant role when we think about responding to a pandemic as instructors and professors. And it can go a long way for us to just be vulnerable in our email to say, you know, we're struggling too, and I want to be there for you. I want to support you. Let me know what you need. Coming back to number 6, you know, a questionnaire about the circumstances in our learning environment. When we think about the racial and racist epidemic that we also have happening simultaneously, it's really important for students of color to hear from their professors and their instructors that we know that this is happening, and that there is a lot of pain and that there's a lot of struggle. We don't want to lean on our students of color or our Black students to solve this for us, but we do want to signify that we're thinking about them, that we care, and that, you know, we are making some efforts to address our own racial biases and making improvements to move forward. This is not a political statement. This is not taking political sides. It's simply acknowledging the pain that exists for our students, and making ourselves open to them and available to them to talk with us or to ask for some specific things that they might need from us to better succeed in our courses. We're trying to set them up for academic success, and these are some of the ways to do that, instead of going along business as usual, pretending like nothing is happening. This requires vulnerability on our part, but we really, really do need to know the impact that that vulnerability can have on our students. And then number 13, do make space for students and colleagues from underrepresented groups to share their lived experiences if they initiate that sharing. It's important that we don't call them out, that we don't call on our underrepresented students to share. But if they do want to share, let's make space for them. It's important for us to listen and listen well, and not play devil's advocate, not try to push them when they're sharing something about their lived experience. It's important for us not to push them in their thinking. That has a time and that has a place. But it's important that we don't push them if they're sharing a painful lived experience, and instead we're making space for them. It's also important for us as instructors and professors to make sure that we're creating that space in the classroom and not allowing our other students who are not underrepresented to challenge or push them on their personal lived experience. That's very different from intellectual engagement. So these are just a couple of different ways to address some of these situational factors. They're powerful, they're complex, they require our vulnerability, but addressing these situational factors sensitively and complexly is really the key to academic success. And it's particularly important to advance the success of underrepresented students. The research on this is very clear. For additional resources, we have Inclusive Excellence, a variety of resources on our website. We have inclusive online teaching with a variety of resources. Dr. Krista Terry and I developed a video module on fostering community and sense of belonging in online courses. We also have the power of case studies. We have a video module with Dr. Carol Babiak and a case study resource bank that are all linked in these slides. And the Inclusive Excellence team and Dr. Elizabeth Bellows has created and initiated a syllabus design framework that has a framework template on it. And soon we will have a video module that will go with that. So I encourage you to explore these additional resources as well. And I just want to say thank you for joining me again today. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, Dr. Brandy Bryson, at brysonbs@appstate.edu, and you can also find me on the Center for Academic Excellence website. Thank you again.